Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the zodiac signs and depression. And yes, this does apply and pertain to the sun, moon, and ascendant. Anyway, well, first off, as far as Aries goes, well, Aries is often very upbeat, and they're not obviously readily discouraged. It's not a sign that you would see succumb to despondency or depression and often, but what could make I think Aries depressed, even not necessarily in a clinical sense, but even just I mean in just general, just being sad or dejected. It can be not being able to lead, or it could be becoming despondent over losing some battle with someone, whether it might be verbal or otherwise. Aries generally knows how to fight and win, but they could be some of the worst losers in the zodiac. Bill Belichick, renowned coach Bill Belichick's son in Aries, he does not seem like he handles losing very graciously. So, I mean, if somebody rises to the top or surpasses them in some way, in something that they're very interested in, they feel, like this person showed superiority to them, I think that can make Aries somewhat dejected. But those are some things as far as Aries goes. I mean, things that you look at the zodiac sign, it's really about when things that they're so connected with, that they resonate with so well, are deprived. I think is what causes some depression, even if it's just general sadness, not necessarily, again, not necessarily the clinical depression, but it doesn't mean it couldn't be in some instances. Now for Taurus, I would say for Taurus, what would really, I mean, me having Taurus rising, I could relate and resonate a lot with a lot of this and know from personal experience. What I think would make Taurus very despondent is if they're deprived of their routine. Sometimes just making a major change or transition for Taurus could be so devastating, it can cause them to go into, become rather depressed and really sad and melancholy. Those are, I mean, that's how I think Taurus can be affected strongly if they go into an environment, say, that is fairly, like, has contentious or combative situations of very, a lot of violence or volatility. Those are things that I think could take the wind out of the sails, so to speak, for Taurus, and make them feel somewhat furlong and sad. I mean, keep in mind, I mean, the 12th house in astrology, I mean, 12th house is associated with mental illness, and that can include depression. So an Aries often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for Taurus. So you can understand where something, like a volatile situation, or being in fear of some battle, or strife or discord, this could really do something to Taurus where it could make them to a point of sadness, or if they're in a contentious, even if it's a domestic situation that's contentious, I think this could lead, I mean, Taurus in some isolated cases to actual depression. But what I'm talking about, I mean, in most cases this won't be transpiring when I'm talking about the zodiac signs, people, but it is just it's more, I mean, it's more inclined toward people just becoming really sad, really dejected and despondent. Now, as far as Gemini goes, well, with Gemini, the thing about Gemini is that Gemini can, of course, abhor and disdain monotony. And what happens with Gemini is, I think what can make them very sad and dejected is when if their variety, if they're somehow deprived of their variety, if they're in some kind of confined or regimented situation where they can't do, the things that they want to do, I guess you could say somewhat superficially, do this for a little bit of time, do that for a little bit of time. That could that's another thing that could take the wind out of, something that could take the wind out of Gemini's sails. Gemini is often very animated, very vivacious, and you take something like that away. I mean, from Gemini to have their freedom to do, to do many different things, to be able to communicate. If Gemini, I mean, can you imagine, like, if Gemini lost his or her voice? I mean, that would be more devastating, traumatic to Gemini, perhaps more than any of the other zodiac signs on average, because Gemini is very voluble, they're very loquacious, they like to talk, of course. And keep in mind, I mean, Taurus often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for Gemini. So with Gemini, what it is, it's the fact that what can make them really despondent, again talking about the 12th house in astrology, can be connected with mental illness, and it can, I mean, be our fears. And of course mental illness can include depression. You're looking at the zodiac sign Gemini, and they, with Taurus being often on that 12th house cusp in a solar natal chart for Gemini, it can be a situation where even having some stability in terms of consistency in their life, something that is more, somewhat monotonous, that could be, or even, I mean, in having to stabilize and settle down. This is something that I think could cause Gemini to become overly depressed. What Taurus may see as something that they can really be enamored with, Gemini can have an anathema to. It's interesting because in my chart, it's a little bit contradictory because I have a Gemini moon and Taurus ascendant. So like my inner personality, my Gemini moon really likes to do manifold things, but my outer demeanor, my Taurus ascendant likes to have things very steady, very stabilized, somewhat monotonous. It would seem boring to a lot of people, but with Taurus, it's more structured and it's very disciplined, and it's routine that they often thrive on. Now going to Cancer. Well, as far as Cancer goes, I think what could put Cancer in a state of despondency is just having a really unstable home life or strife on the home front, something where they can have their introversion and be able to have their home and have a safe home situation. As many of you may know, I have a Cancer sun. My sun sign is Cancer, and I'm having some difficulty right now. I have Uranus, I believe Pluto, in my 4th house in my progressed chart, and saying that I've been somewhat peripatetic would probably be a vast understatement. So those are things for Cancer, I think, that can make Cancer really sad and despondent, an unhappy home life, maybe a family life that is dissident, or where family members, there's discord with them, and not having their emotional security, not having their safety and security, could put Cancer, I think, in really negative manifestation in isolated cases, some kind of depression. Now, keep in mind that the zodiac sign Gemini often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for the zodiac sign Cancer. And this is about, the 12th house cusp, of course, could be connected with mental illness, which could include depression, its fears. It could be, thieves can be a big fear for Cancer, more so than a lot of other signs, because, Gemini, again, talking about Gemini often being on that 12th house cusp in a solar natal chart for Cancer. It could be, and in some cases too, it also, Gemini energy is, Cancer sadly is often bamboozled by thieves. They're often an easy mark for them. It could also be, Gemini is also about communication, and it's not that Cancer can't be communicative. They can actually be, very loquacious. They do have ability to speak, and but the thing about it is that Cancer is so introverted. They don't, Cancer will often, I think, limit their communications, and if they're forced to go out and be talking to many different people and actually have to go out and do this communication, I think that could be something that would maybe put Cancer in some kind of state of sadness or melancholy, because what it does is it takes them out of being private, being introverted, introspective, or what have you, into themselves. To themselves. This is where, Cancer could be taken out of their realm, so to speak, and this is where really because they don't, because Gemini energy is often surrounded by people. Gemini sun moon ascendant people are often ones that bring a lot of people to them. They gravitate toward them because they're so interesting. And it's not that Cancer can't be interesting, it's just the simple fact that Cancer would like, to have things more on an introverted level and have their few select friends, the ones they feel close to home with. Now going to Leo. Well, Leo, what happens with them, I think what can put them in a strong state of despondency and sadness is the fact that if the Leo ego is damaged or hurt, that is their keynote. I mean, they're really, Leo often needs to learn humility. What happens is if they're conquered, they're shown off by somebody that they're not the best, they're not supreme in this certain area, or what have you. That is what will make Leo very sad, very dejected. Many of you may have remembered renowned basketball player Wilt Chamberlain, late great Wilt Chamberlain, had a son. His son's sign was Leo, and he lost countless times to Wilt Chamberlain in the NBA finals, and to Bill Russell and company, and I know in my heart, I understand Wilt Chamberlain. I think he had a different ascendant, either Taurus or Gemini, but the thing about it is, the sun is the inner self, and I could see how that was very devastating to him. And I think like some kind of betrayal is often something which could put them in, a strong state of sadness and really dejection and feeling furlong. Keep in mind the zodiac sign Cancer often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for Leo. So for Leo, the thing about that is, I think the fact that if they have to, be there, if their feelings are hurt, if it's exposed that their feelings were actually hurt, and they had to cry in front of somebody due to the fact that they were hurt, that's something too that can really put them in some state of trepidation. Remember, 12th house is about our fears as well, and it's about, 12th house could be connected with mental illness as well. And if something that has really, hit home with Leo, or if it's something where maybe a family member did something to them, somebody they were very close to home with did something to actually hurt them, this could be something I think that could be very devastating to the zodiac sign Leo. Leo will often figuratively lick their wounds in solitude and seclusion and not want to show them to others. If they had to actually be in a situation where they were forced to show them, they may see it as some kind of weakness, and that could be maybe devastating to them and put them in a very protracted period of despondency, I would think. Now going to Virgo, what I want to say about Virgo is it's the fact that what could actually put them in a strong state of sadness and despondency and feeling melancholy, what have you, is if they were deprived of being busy, of not being able to work, if they succumb to some debilitation or some kind of restriction or limitation that may prohibit them from working or staying active, staying busy, being of service to others. That is something that I think might be very traumatic for them, actually. And the fact that Virgo can often, remember, they're very self-effacing, very shy people. Leo often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for Virgo, and I think the way that can manifest with them is the fact that if Virgo was forced, because again, not to be redundant, but the 12th house cusp, is connected with mental illness, and it also can be our fears. So what could happen is if Virgo is something where where they are forced to be extroverted, overly gregarious, and be in a situation where they're in the limelight or they're actually getting all kinds of recognition. It might be something that they just may not really want because they are so self-effacing and so reticent. And I mean, I don't think necessarily go into a full-blown depression, but it could be something that can make them you really really somewhat really somewhat sad, or somewhat despondent. I mean, 12 Leo energy could be about bullying, and remember the 12th house is about fears. So if there's some kind of situation where Virgo is being bullied, I think as well, this is a situation that they might have a hard time overcoming, because the mutable signs in general are a little bit more easily coerced. That's why they're part of the reason they're considered weaker signs, because they are a little bit more easily coerced. And as far as the bullying aspect or element goes, this is something that they may have some issues with. Now, Leo in the 12th house cusp, I mean mental. I mean, this is something where, again, if Virgo becomes depressed or sad or miserable, it might come out in let's say a flamboyant way, but because it's Leo, could be in a very loud way, in a way that it is actually very readily known to others. People will see it with Virgo a lot more than a lot of other signs. I mean, Virgo is an earth sign, and earth signs can have a little more propensity toward more despondency. They have more of a melancholy aura around them, and I think it's more noticeable with them in general sadness than it is with a lot of other signs. Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn can be strongly connected with this melancholy energy. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for my take on astrology. I'm sorry, the zodiac signs and depression, part 1 of 2. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be talking about the zodiac signs and depression, part 2 of 2. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.